Hello and welcome to Taking You to School with Dr. Tom Prichard. I am your host, JP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, joining me here each and every week is the 8-time Smoky Mountain Wrestling Tag Team Champion, the former WWE World Tag Team Champion, and one of the greatest trainers ever in the history of the business, the Doctor of Desire, Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, how are you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing great today. Thank you very much. It's always great when you're in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's always great when I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. Beautiful day, beautiful sunshine, and the summer's coming to a close very, very quickly, man. It's hard to believe it's almost, September, right in the middle of August. That's insane, but I like it.
Yes. Now, a little bit of a sad note, of course. Dominic Denucci, legendary trainer, legendary wrestler, passed away at the ripe age of 89. So very long, very good life. He obviously traveled the globe many times over. Did you know Dominic at all? Did you have any crossings with him?
I don't believe we ever crossed paths. Have a lot of stories about Dominic Denucci I've heard over the years. I know he trained Shane Douglas, Cactus Jack. My gosh, who else? I know Johnny Rod. Hildebrand, yes. I was going to say Johnny Rod's was also a big trainer around Brooklyn and Queens and stuff like that. But Dominic was a mainstay in WWF for years and always one of those guys that Vince Sr. looked up to and had on the card and had around for a long, long time. So I never had the opportunity to cross paths with Dominic, but everybody I've ever talked to about him has said nothing but great things. And he was one of those old timers that didn't mind offering advice and didn't mind showing you what he thought you should do too. So yeah, it's a sad, sad day, but my gosh, this has been a crazy year as well.
And if you remember Cody Michaels, who we also trained, you probably know from USWA days.
Yes, I did know Cody from USWA days. So the world's getting to be a smaller place. It's going to happen to all of us. And when it comes, there's nothing we can do about it.
I had the chance to interview him back in February, actually, of this year. He was still very with it. Great memory, great recall. Just funny guy. Curses a lot more than you would think. Great guy.
Well, a lot of people curse a lot more than you think. And one of the things that stuck with me just the last couple of years, I listened to a interview with a guy named Rick Barnes, the UT basketball coach here. And he says he doesn't cuss in practice. He doesn't yell in practice. He finds another way to communicate. But I think when you're passionate about something, you find your style, you find your way to communicate. And if Dominic liked to cuss, I certainly understand it, man. It is a way to express yourself. It's not everybody's cup of tea either, but a lot of us aren't everybody's flavor of ice cream or cup of tea. So, but everything I've heard about Dominic Denucci through the years, he was one of those guys who earned the respect early on and continued throughout his career and later on as a trainer. And I know Shane loved him. I know Cactus loved him too. And there was a lot of guys, Brian Hildebrand, as you mentioned, a lot of guys who grew up around there or moved out there and got a taste of what the old school was really like.
Former WWF Tag Team Champion with Bruno Sammartino, his best friend.
Yeah.
So
a lot of there's a lot of rich history around that East Coast and up and down the East Coast. But it would really help. I say it all the time. It would really help if guys and gals who want to get in professional wrestling became students of the game, because you can learn bits and pieces. It's like, and I'll give credit to Sin Bodhi for this, because Sin came in and said, when we're asked why we should watch, why you, the student, should watch older matches, and Sin had the best analogy I've heard so far. He said it's like panning for gold. You go down in that river and you pan for gold. You may wind up with some rocks and go for days and days, and then all of a sudden you wind up with some nuggets that you didn't know were there. So you find something And that's that would be a huge part of Dominic Denucci's career, helping the young people coming up, helping the kids that wanted to be in wrestling, or just helping anybody who wanted to be in the business. You had some guys like Dominic. Hell, you had guys like Bruno, who they say you never should meet your idols or heroes. But Bruno, my gosh, I've had the opportunity to meet him more than a few times, have dinner with him, and get to ask him about Buddy Rogers. One of the greatest guys in the business. And I think Dominic was in that same vein. So you're going to hear a lot of that if you ask anybody who was close or had any contact with a guy like Dominic Denucci. I believe that.
Bruno is funny, didn't curse at all. Very, very straight-laced, very cool, calm, and collected guy. Dominic is very fiery, cursed a lot. Sweetheart of a guy, but, he definitely had that tough mentality right off the boat from Italy, as was Bruno too. But it's just funny that those two connected, the Pittsburgh kind of connection there, and just became best buddies. Yeah,
and it was maybe Bruno didn't swear in public and swear as much as some, but I think Bruno had his moments, and Bruno was the kind of guy that would stand up for people, and I've always heard stories about that too. I heard Bruno. It was, I believe it was Bruno. I'm pretty sure it was, who got a fella an opportunity to wrestle in the Garden many, many years ago. A guy named Frank Hickey, Spaceman Frank Hickey. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
Yeah. You ever read or know anything? About this spreading the newspapers out in the locker room, and
no,
he would come in the locker room and spread newspapers all over the benches and the floor in his area. It would just be his area, and he was a gimmick. He was one of those guys that you just said, "Hey, man, he's a gimmick." And Bruno, he got him booked. Asked Vince Sr. just put him on the card. It's his dream. It's his something he's always wanted to do. And thanks to Bruno, Frank Hickey got to wrestle in the Garden. So, those kind of guys were a special breed of men, and it's a shame that there's not more of them around today.
Yeah, that's true. R.I.P. Dominic Denucci. What a legend, and obviously got so much acclaim afterwards for being such a great trainer. Foley and Shane. You have one guy that kind of makes this great. Two guys that make it. I mean, that's unbelievable. And obviously Brian Hildebrand was everywhere, and refereeing WCW, Smoky Mountain everywhere in between. So I mean, quite a great resume as far as a trainer as well.
Yeah, no doubt, and that's why I think all the accolades people are heaping on him or talking about, it's well deserved. And I wish I would have had the opportunity to cross paths, but I've seen interviews and I've talked to people. In fact, Mike Lettieri and Ken from Imagine Wrestling love to tell stories about Dominic coming around and being a huge help and just offering advice to those guys. And you had some veterans who liked it. You had some veterans who were passionate about it. And then you had those who weren't. But Dominic was certainly passionate about everything he did.
And he did a signing probably about a month ago in Hamburg, PA, which was a big WWF stomping around back in the day. So it was interesting. He was still out and about doing signings even last month.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that the guys who were part of that era, part of the Bruno era, part of the WWF era, were still around and still showing up, because man, I shouldn't be amazed, because I was a wrestling fan my whole life and I grew up and I could tell you about all the guys who came before me. I could. And whenever I see people out and about, and it blows my mind sometimes that people can remember back that far, but it's really, really good. It's really, really cool. And when you had guys like a Dominic Denucci or Tony Parisi or Dino Bravo, I read that he and Bravo worked as brothers early on. So he had a great career, was in a great spot, and I think he still appreciated what the business not only gave to him, but was given to the next generation coming up. And I'm glad. I had never heard any remarks about him being bitter or condescending towards this generation, which is a good thing, I guess. Maybe he didn't watch that much, but but by all accounts, he was a pro's pro, a man's man, and in this business, and especially up the East Coast, on the East Coast during that time, it was a harder time to keep your spot or to earn a spot. That's what I would think.
I know Shane would watch some shows with him because Shane's son wanted to watch, and Dominic was close by, so he'd bring Dominic over, or he'd bring his son to Dominic's. They would watch some wrestling, and he said he couldn't keep up with it. It was just like the psychology wasn't there. He said there was too much going on. He said he couldn't keep up.
Yeah, I've heard that from a couple people talking about Dominic would explain why you needed to slow down. And then somebody would go out and try and do a scientific match or do a match the way he's talking about, but then he'd come back and tell him, no, you have to have some spots in there. So there's got to be a balance, no doubt. And but I say it all the time, the basics and fundamentals never go out of style. So how do you also have an exciting match for today's crowd? There's a way. You just have to figure it out. And that's a huge part, is knowing what your audience is buying and know what to sell them and how to go about it. So that takes years. Takes years in any business concerning the entertainment business. And said many, many times, professional wrestling is show business. So keyword on business, I think.
Yes. Now, a big part of the wrestling business is the talent relations portion of the WWE, or any really main big time PBAW big promotion. Really, though, I want to focus on WWE and talent relations. So when I say talent relations, what does that mean?
Well, you have people who have to relate to talent and talk to talent. Before, many, many years ago, before cable and WWF at that time took over, you had a booker, you had a promoter, and the booker was pretty much your talent relations with the promoter and maybe an office guy here or there, an agent, like whoever it might be, going from town to town. Gary Hart was probably the talent relations guy in Texas for the Dallas booking office, because if there was something wrong at the time, you would have to talk to the booker or the promoter directly if you had that kind of relationship. But when you have an enormous crew like WWE or even any company today, you can have a guy who wears a couple hats. He can be a talent relations guy. He can be a booker. He could be a writer. He could be a promoter. But talent relations is pretty self-explanatory. You need to have someone, a liaison, if you will, between you and the talent. Because I think Vince, when we first got signed, I remember Vince would bring everybody. No, we didn't get to go to the house. We got signed at the arena, and he would tell us. He would come in and just explain how we were going to be signed. No guarantees back then when we first signed, not at all. But we got signed, and it was Vince, the who did a lot of the one-on-one. Then, as it became bigger, you needed a staff. You needed a talent relations department, because this way, you didn't just have Vince, the guys could call. Vince had his guys, certainly, that knew he was available anytime for them. But when you have a crew like that, you need to have somebody helping them navigate the waters, because it could get a little lonely out there, a little hard to deal with, or you needed to have help dealing with something, whether it's your check, or some personal issues or business issues, and talent relations. You're their connection to the office.
With the talent relations back then, I guess he hired JJ Dillon. Was he was he the first original head of talent relations?
I don't know that he was the first. He might have been. I know Pat Patterson. My brother was there when everything was forming, I think, in that direction. And JJ might have been the first guy. Might have been Pat. I know maybe it wasn't Pat. But went to JJ. I know Bruce had it for a little bit, and then went to JR, and whatever happened from there happened. I mean,
apparently Bruce wasn't that good at it, from what I hear from a lot of people.
Well, we all hear things from other people. So I honest to God, I was happy to be there, and you can't be happy to be anywhere if you want to make a splash and make an impression. So I didn't deal with him because I tried to stay out of his hair.
Apparently JJ was good in the role, but I guess as he was leaving, he was kind of headed out. His pay was being a little bit of cut. He didn't want to do it anymore and all this other stuff. Eventually, he ends up in WCW doing the same role, but I guess the pay was probably more to his liking. Jim Ross takes over, and Ross is really known as the best guy in that position. Why is that? Like, is it temperament? Is it the way he handles people, the way he handles Vince, and then relays it to the talent? Like, how can JR be so lauded or liked in that role?
Well, first of all, it's a thankless job. If something goes great, it was the boss's idea. If something failed miserably, it's your idea. And that's just the way things roll in the corporate scene, I guess. I don't think JR was always satisfied and happy in the job, but I know he did do a great job because he knew how to talk to wrestlers. He knew how to talk to talent. He knew how to talk to talent, especially who had been around the territories. And he also knew how to talk to talent who hadn't been around. And there is a way, I truly believe, that you talk to talent where they need to, number one, trust what you say. That's not always a given, because just with the reputation of mistrust or doubt or flat out being lied to over the years, it pretty much puts some scars on you. And JR understood that. He had been through the ringer before. He dealt with people like Bill Watts, Paul Bosch, and Leroy McGurk, the old school guys who their idea of discipline was coming down hard and heavy, either fines or being fired or suspended or whatever it may be. And JR had been around that. Then he was getting to know Vince when he started that job in talent relations, and Vince has his own mannerisms and habits, I guess, that you have to learn how to adapt to and understand that when things come down the line, and you need somebody to take the bump or the fall, look, talent relations, you get to deliver the bad news and sometimes good news, but for the most part, you're there to make sure that things are running smooth and the guys have someone they can trust and talk to. And when they need something, go to you and see if you can help them solve whatever problem it is they need solved.
So when did you start with talent relations, WB?
I started training the guys in 96. I didn't have an office yet. I got 96, probably 97. There was the fourth floor you walked in right, and then immediately left to talent relations. Nicole DeRazio, Ann Russo, Dennis Brent, Lynn Brent, JR had his office in this area. And then like right next to that was Vince's office. So I got that in 97, I think. but I was probably under the umbrella of talent relations when we started the developmental. But I think it was, shortly after 97 when I became an official employee, with insurance and taxes taken out and things like that. Before that, I had always been an independent contractor. So now I'm learning all the benefits of what it's like when people say, oh my gosh, I've got great insurance, I've got dental, I've got a 401k. Had no idea what that was. But 97 was when I believe I was officially on the fourth floor in talent relations. Not only was I going over the studio, but I also had an office then.
So who gives you the role? Like, were you appointed to the role? What do they say is your role?
Well, Vince was the one who asked me about it first, if I'd be interested in doing that. And I was, because in 96, let's see, I would have turned 36. So my time in the ring, my neck was killing me, my back. I had some injuries I was trying to keep on the down low, but I was ready to train. And Vince asked me, and then he explained I would have to stay a lot more in Stanford, to which I replied, that sounds great to me. So it was JR who I answered to. JJ was still there when I first started. And I had to file the reports, do the reports, write the reports. Didn't have a computer back then. So I would write them on, handwrite them out, hand them to Nicole, who would type them up for me. Nicole Durazio would type them up and then send them to JR and whoever else needed it. I think Vince was on there too. And I would just give them a daily report. So JJ was the first guy I answered to, then it was JR. So that was it.
So what did you think about JR, just like working with him that way? I mean, was he easy peasy, smooth guy?
Yeah, but once again, he JR I've always got along with because I understood his temperament, I understood what he's going through. But he's one of those. I get it because I feel the same way. A lot of times, nobody can understand until you actually walk in their shoes. I've never walked in JR's shoes, never walked in Bruce's or anybody else's, but my shoes. So I only know my viewpoint. And but JR, I had an idea. Again, once I got a feel for how things were working with WWF at the time and Titan Sports, it's nonstop. It really is nonstop. And I'd always heard that from people and heard the stories. And you talk about you go into the studio and there's something going on all the time, day and night. It just never stopped. So I started to realize this is different than anything I've ever been through. Even when I was working from 93 to 96 in WWF, I just knew it was a different animal. It was a different process. It was a different way of thinking. So when JR was in that position, he's dealing with the guys that are calling, not always complaining, but offering ideas or wanting to talk to Vince. And JR was the first one you had to talk to you. And he did his job. He knew how to handle the guys. Would there be days he'd be grouchy and grumpy? Hell, there's days we're all grouchy and grumpy. And I understand that now. A famous line I always heard about Bill Watts. He says, I didn't know how much the boys were really assholes until I got in the office. Until he owned his own territory. Now, oh boy, all the guys are assholes, right? Well, he was one of those assholes too. But JR understood that. And Jay understood that not everything's going to be fair. Not everything's always going to be right. But it was up to him to at least help make it right or do the best he could. And I thought he did a great job. I really do. I give him all the credit in the world because he was dealing with egos and had to maneuver and do the best he could to get what the company was looking for. And that's at the end of the day, that's all that really mattered. And JR knew that. He's always known that. So, and to stick around and do what he's been doing for all these years, got to give him credit. Always have. Always admired and respected him because it ain't easy, especially doing that gig.
With talent relations, obviously you're hiring and firing. Are you doing any hiring and firing when you're in talent relations?
Never fired anybody, made suggestions. Yes, we certainly recommended people. And of course, you had other people recommending people too. We'd have people come in from all over, and we could either do the tryout at the studio or fly them to OVW in Louisville or HWA in Cincinnati. And then I was going to Louisville and Cincinnati once a month, or maybe twice. I think it might have been once a month, twice a month, or every other week, whatever it was. At one time, I was making a lot of trips out of Newark. But I never fired anybody. Did we? I suggest, yeah, there was a few we suggested, and Batista had a tryout, but I think he was hired before he even got over the studio. I think, but he had the thing about Batista. He actually had a clue when he came. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but he really did. He locked up loose. He followed. He let me lead. Didn't fight me. Kurt was the same way. I think he was hired before he even got there. So, Randy Orton, when he came in for a tryout, he was young and he'd been doing the stuff in St. Louis that a lot of kids do. Where you go out and you find a ring, you do the backyard stuff, and his dad was telling him, "Man, you don't need to do all this stuff because it's gonna hurt you. You're either physically or professionally, so you need to get away from these guys. You don't want to be associated with that." And he did. He got away from them, but Randy always had talent, and he was just young, and you can't do a whole lot about that. You just have to let him grow out of it or not. So, but as far as hiring and firing, make suggestions, say yes, no. But in the end, and even the other guys who were in that position say, "Hey, I hired this guy and I hired that guy." Yeah, I don't know about that. I know JR was a guy who pretty much put everything together when I was there.
Man, JR, if you think about it, hired some real gems when he was there. Remember Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Mick Foley? Any of those guys ever do anything or accomplish anything? Dustin Rhodes, any of those guys?
Yeah, they might have had a chance, but I don't know what happened. I don't know whatever happened to that Rock guy. He haven't heard from him in a while on the wrestling front. And Austin, yeah, Austin was one of those guys that was certainly on JR's radar because he paid attention to all that stuff, and that's. I never had a family for a long time. Never did in the business. Just didn't. And but I was very secluded. Once I was away, I wanted to be away. Just I need a break. But JR never had the chance to get a break. Those guys who work next to events like that, I've seen it. I have seen it. I've had a taste of what they go through. And when I say a taste, I mean I just put my finger in and went like that. And those guys are involved. Where he calls you all the time. Vince has called me on a couple of occasions. But the point is, those guys are in the mix, and you don't have a lot of time for family. You have no time for family. I mean, you earn your money when you go there, especially when you're in that top spot and right next to Vince. It's not easy at all. So JR put up with it, and his wife Jan put up with it, his daughters, and all that stuff. So people think like it's a glamorous job, and it's all lobster and steak and lobster, but no, you work, and those guys were working. They still work to this day. It's a demanding job. It's something you need to be focused on, and it continues. I think it's going to continue on as long as the company's in business.
So, do you personally have to watch tapes, study tapes, pass the notes along? Like, is that kind of all encompassing and a part of the job?
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I had an office over in Titan Tower. I tried to do it at the studio. Then the more we were training over there, the more we bled through, when they were trying to do VOs and stuff like that. So the studio hated when we came over. So finally, I had a place to watch the tapes and find new talent when they were sending tapes, sending VHSs, and then they started sending the CDs or DVDs, whatever the hell they're called. And I would watch those. But what I found was this: you hear about people throwing tapes away or throwing DVDs away all the time. No, put it in. But if you didn't grab my attention in the first minute, I'm not going to sit there for 20 minutes and watch a 20-minute match. Just not going to do it. I would tell guys, give me 6 to 8 minutes. Give me a great promo. 1 minute. That's all we need. Because we would get pretty much consistently anywhere from 5 to 6 tapes or DVDs a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. But it was a lot of stuff to have to look at. And you also had, wasn't a big deal, but I was booking some of the extras for TV and used guys up and down the East Coast, or if we were in somewhere else, and I had a card on somebody and knew some of their guys from doing seminars there or previous working relationship. I was setting those up too, along with just general daily office routines. And I couldn't even tell you what that is now. I would answer a phone. I would talk to people who wanted to be wrestlers, or answer the letters. I've got a great letter. I've looked for years to find it, and I finally found it during the pandemic. I have a guy who sent a letter to Linda McMahon in Houston, Texas, forwarded it to me because he had all these great ideas how to sell tickets in Houston. And he was one of these guys who had promoted shows in Port Arthur and outside of around Houston, and just the outlaw shows, called them Outlaws back then, and draw maybe 20, 25 people. He had these great ideas. So I would have to answer him back and call him back. And, things like that. They sure wasn't, I wasn't curing cancer, but I was having a great time.
So do you have to scout the wrestlers in person? Do you have to go to indie shows? Are you doing tryouts at WWE? Or are you doing tryouts elsewhere?
We were doing tryouts at WWE. We were doing tryouts at the studio at this time. And also, as I said, when I would go to OVW or HWA, I would go to their house shows, see how the guys are doing on the house shows, give my critiques that night, write them in my report to send to the office as well. So I wasn't going to, I take that back. I did go to a few up and down the East Coast. Some were Mike Sparta, some were Freddie Sparta shows, and some other just independent guys that it was suggested, sometimes by Kevin Kelly, sometimes by JR, but not a whole lot. Because, man, I had full days in Stanford, and I didn't mind it. I was living right downtown Stanford, if that tells you anything, right across from the Stanford Town Mall, the Biltmore. And Stanford's not a real exciting place, but you're not there to do real exciting things. You're there to work. And so anyway, that's what we did.
So, are you looking for, let's say, a ready-made talent? Are you looking for potential? Are you looking for charisma? Is Vince saying what he wants, or how does that go?
Yeah, well, when I was there, we were pretty much we got a lot of resumes and a lot of DVDs, a lot of VHSs. we also got recommendations, and we got people who would plug their friends. So I remember Vince would get the reports. He's always copied on the reports. Don't know if he read them, but if he asked, for instance, here's an example. Test Andrew Martin,
Right.
when he came and trained with us. Tall guy, good looking kid, had something. There was something about him, but he was training. He was confident, and Vince Russo came to me one night and says, "Hey, is Andrew ready to go on? Is he ready to go out there tonight?" I said, "Well, I don't know if you're ever ready, but yeah, if he's ready, if he's here, he's ready. He can do whatever you need him to do. I feel that confident." So Russo asked me, "Would you come in this room and tell Vince?" It was Vince's office. I went down with Russo, walked in, and it's not only Vince, but it's Bruce, it's Pat, it's I don't remember who else he had helping, right? Maybe Michael Hayes, but some of the agents in there too. And Russo says, "Tell him what you told me." And I said, "Well, I don't know if you're ever really ready, but I think if you need him to do something tonight, he's ready. As ready as he's going to be." And they just said, "Okay." And they put him on that night. They just wanted to hear somebody say he can do it. And that's all it takes. It really is. And I took Andrew aside and I said, "Dude, they want to do this deal with you tonight. How do you feel about it?" He goes, I think I can do it." I said, "Yeah, I know you can do it. Just kick ass." And that was it. Things like that they would ask. And sometimes it'd work and sometimes it wouldn't. But it all goes back to that relationship deal. It all goes back to can this guy do it? Let me see what he looks like in that position. Let me see how he reacts. Let me see what he does. When he comes back, he can be great, or he can say that one stupid thing coming back from the ring through the curtain, saying something stupid that somebody heard, and then it becomes this molehill. And I've seen that happen too. So yeah, it's show business, and people are always looking all the time. Hey, is he the right guy for the part? Can he pull this off? What do we have to do to prove it? Well, we have to give him an opportunity so we can prove it or disprove it. So that's the way that works.
It seems like there's no set thing. There's not like a checkbox. Like the guy has to have charisma, star power, wrestling ability, look, potential, height, weight, all that stuff. Like, I guess there is not like a set thing, right? Where you're
Right.
definitely looking for something.
Daniel Bryan will never be a star. Steve Austin will never make it past the third match. Never. Hunter? But Mark Merrill, this is the guy that's going to revolutionize wrestling. And I like Mark. I'm not knocking Mark. I'm just saying, I've heard so many times, this guy can't, this guy won't. Surprise, surprise. There is no definite way. It's like trying to blow smoke through a keyhole, or trying to hold water and Jello, nail Jello to the wall. There's no set criteria. You can always say we want charisma. We want people to draw money. We want great people. We want good people. We want people we can rely on, count on, and things like that. Well, sure you do. You want all those things, but when it comes right down to it, if you're not a valuable asset, if you're not a commodity, if you don't draw money and you don't do anything for the product, there's no reason for a corporation to really keep you on. And as we've seen in the last couple months, they don't have to have a reason if they don't want you there.
Yeah, budget
don't.
Cuts, quote unquote. Yeah,
budget cuts, yeah.
Whatever.
I've heard
it.
Yep. Man, I've heard some really good excuses there.
Creative has nothing for you. That was a good one for a while.
The other one is they really need you back in the place you came from. Oh God, sure they do. They really need us back. Yeah, I mean, I get it, understand it. It's a work. Life's a work, believe it or not. But there is no way to say. That's what I'm saying. Because if there was a way to say, you have to be 6'1", check. He's 230 pounds, check. Look like a Greek god, check. Daniel Bryan had none of those. Daniel Bryan got over organically. CM Punk got over organically. These guys were authentic. They're legitimate. And that should have been a criteria to be authentic. And it was, and it is, it still is. But the rule of thumb is, have your personality and turn it up to 10. Amplify it. Just be larger than life. What you see with Austin is exactly how Steve is. He loved to drink beer. He's from Texas. He's got a drawl. He's got an accent. He was not stunning Steve. He was not a Hollywood blonde. He was stone cold Steve Austin the whole time. It just took him a few years to find it and bring it out. So, but he was not ever supposed to hit like he did either. But he did, because that's the way it works. It's the unpredictability. Now, I'm not so sure the unpredictability really counts as much, and it's showing. It's pretty well. Yeah, it's pretty well where it's at, and I think a huge problem or a huge issue with that is because nobody in the last few years, at least, I say few, I mean 15 years, maybe 10, 15 years, has seen anything authentically touch them or make them feel this is a no-miss TV show. When you had Austin and Rock and Hunter and Mankind and Shawn and all those guys going full barrel, it was a lot of animosity backstage, but that transcended on stage, and it showed everybody that these guys were assholes, and these guys may or may not have really liked each other. They had to do business together, but there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of feeling. There was a lot of passion behind it. Nowadays, nobody has had a chance to see that up close. And one of the huge elements missing is not being able to go to a live wrestling match or live wrestling event and actually feel the passion with people holding up signs on a weekly basis, screaming and feeling it. I like to watch the matches from old school days to demonstrate, look, this is what it was back then. You had to fight your way to the ring sometimes. You had to fight your way back from the ring sometimes. Different culture, different time. But my God, it's missing today. There's not a lot of unpredictability because everybody's writing a promo or writing and practicing a 10-minute match all day long, and it loses the effect, in my opinion.
So as far as like talent relations, for guys that want to be in talent relations, like when you're in there, do you have to have a resume? Like, do they look for ex-wrestlers? It's like, do you have to be an ex-trained? Like, how do you kind of get in there? How do you work for talent relations?
Well, I know that when I was there, it was the guys like a JJ Dillon. JJ was the first, and I can understand that because JJ had been there. He knew how the office worked. And when I was growing up, you were either office or you were one of the boys. And I took that as meaning, well, you're either one of us or you're one of them. I was one of us. And then when you get in the office, you learn. You're in the office because you're good at doing office things. And back then it was ex-wrestlers. Back then it was a lot of different. It was a different environment. It was a different mindset. It was a different crew. So you had JJ, old school wrestler, manager, booker. He had been in an office in other places, so he knew how an office operated and worked, and knew the do's and the don'ts and the pitfalls and roadblocks and things you have to deal with. And JR was the same way. But now, these days, as big as it's gotten, and a multi-billion-dollar company, not just $1 million company or multi-million. We're talking billions, and you know how to become a millionaire, right? Start out as a billionaire and buy a wrestling company.
Right, and you start
Anyway,
losing
right.
money.
Yeah, exactly. So but nowadays they want corporate people who do have resumes and who know how to work in the corporate world, not the wrestling world anymore. And corporate people do things differently than old school wrestling people do things, rightfully so, I'm sure. At the same time, if you have a horror movie or you're writing a horror movie and your monsters look not as scary and kind of not authentic and just kind of look like, oh, boo, instead of the real deal. Well, that's what it becomes. I think you need people who understand that genre, who by either watching it their whole life, paying attention to it their whole life. Rob Zombie, we talked about that before. He's a performer, he's an entertainer, but he wrote movies and screenplays and other stuff too. So with wrestling, you have people who have never watched wrestling, and not that WWE is wrestling. I'm saying it's a part of it, though. Oh, you have no idea how some of these guys were brought up or how they got into the business, and they don't care. They don't care, and I'm still of the mindset that show business has a long, storied history, and you should study some of the guys from the old days, just to get a feel for how they did it. Can you do it the same way today? No, not necessarily. You can't do everything, but I think there's still some elements you can take away from it. Some of these guys had pre-ritual routines they did before they went on stage, some stuff they did after they came back. I mean, it's not a 9-to-5 job. And talent relations is a real tough spot to be in, because the guys that I knew were in there loved wrestling, knew wrestling. It's not wrestling anymore. Nowadays, it's the guys who want to make sure that I'm not. You know what? I don't know what they are trying to make sure of anymore, because I haven't been there in a while, and I can only assume. You know what happens when we assume. But I liked it a lot better when you had guys in there who knew how to talk to talent better than they do now.
Did you like the role at all, though? Did you?
I enjoyed. Yeah, I enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed when I was going down and handling or critiquing or scouting OVW and HWA, later Memphis, or earlier Memphis. I went to a couple Memphis shows too. Whatever territory, wherever I went, I enjoyed scouting. I enjoyed talking to the guys. If they had an issue, they could come to me. I'd never played gotcha. I never played, oh man. No. I thought we handle it on this level so it doesn't get to the next level and it escalates. I'd rather deal with it here. You made a mistake. What do I need to do about it? Who do I need to tell and why? And what can we do to make sure we nip it in the bud? I enjoyed that part of it. As it went on, I didn't care for it as much because there were a lot of people coming in from outside forces, outside, I want to say sports, but anyway, getting a tan on the beach, I don't know if that's a sport or not. Right. But but then you had people who would come in and they brought their business sense to what we were trying to do. They didn't understand the coaching mentality or our philosophy. And our philosophy was, this should be fun. You should be passionate about it, no doubt about it. But this should be fun. And when it becomes not fun, it's a job. And it's tough because you're dealing with a lot of egos. You're dealing with a lot of idiots. You're dealing with a lot of people who think they know what they're talking about when they have not a clue. And they don't care because their boss likes them, and it's just a trickle-down effect because it rolls downhill, and you get it. Yeah. So, but I love it. I did. I liked it. There were some times when it got a little hairy, sometimes when it got a little frustrating, but it all worked out.
When did you stop doing the talent relations?
Let's see. I moved. Well, I got fired in 2004, I think. Came back in 2007, and I got sent to Georgia, then got sent to Tampa. So during that time, from 2007 to 2012, yeah, I think so. I was just a coach down in Georgia and Tampa. So I think that was in 2004 I stopped.
Oh. It's funny. If you look up like WWE talent management, they also say, or talent relations, they also say talent management, talent branding. Like they try to put their own little funny spin on it. But it's funny if you get a guy like Jerry Briscoe or something, it's like, no, I scout good wrestling talent, or I scout good talent. Like, no, talent management. No, you're doing talent branding right now. Like, it's weird, like the corporate speak that they throw on there.
But you know, and once again, look, I'm cut from this cloth, and I've never denied it. I know a little more about myself than I did, and I understand that I'm made to do what I'm doing, and those guys are made to do what they're doing. But don't mix it. Don't try and tell me how to do what I'm doing when you have no idea what I'm doing, and you don't know. When you're telling me to do it your way, you don't have a clue. And the one thing that always fascinated me was when people would discuss training or certain methods. And I always thought, safety is number one. We don't want anybody hurt. We're paying you to be there, paying you to train. I'm not paying you to sit at home and be hurt. So that was one of my deals, man. I remember when we had a lot of concussions and we kept getting asked on almost every day, why are these guys getting hurt? Well, I had an answer. They didn't like it. But I will say this. I never understood a drill where you have people stand on all four corners, standing on the corners, in the corner, facing out. And then you have two guys in the ring hitting the ropes, crisscrossing. I never understood that. But that was part of one guy's curriculum. Everybody's got their own way. You got your way, I got my way. The right way, the only way does not exist. But that's a recipe for disaster. I saw no upside to that. Guys falling off the corners, falling off the ropes. Well, let's see. I wonder what guys are getting hurt. I don't know. We'll do the 1,000 squats and you'll get to 501, and then hey, he didn't go all the way down, so let's start all over again. See, man, those are mind games. And there's a place for that. There really is a place for that. But I didn't see where it was fitting in this particular instance. So talent relations, talent branding, all that stuff, scouting. Again, all I wanted to be was a wrestler growing up. I didn't want to be in the office. Didn't have the inkling, didn't have the passion for that. I learned how to do it up there. Again, it was a little different. It was a lot different. And, a tennis player or a volleyball player back then couldn't come in and tell me shit. They couldn't come in and tell me shit when they came in and told me shit because they didn't know shit. And it's finally come to light that they didn't know shit. So, anyway, I just had to say that.
Do you have anybody that you liked working with the most and anybody that you liked working with the least? As far as
well, I enjoy working with JR. There were times when I really enjoyed working with John Laurinaitis.
Yes, the best wrestler of all time. Yes.
Yes, and there were times I didn't. But I understood John's role, and I understand John is a businessman. I understand. Doesn't mean I always liked it, but I understood why he did what he did. And anybody in that position who stays in that position for a while does what you have to do, and it's the corporate world. I'm just. I've said this before. I'm not the corporate guy. I understand that. It's a great company. It really is a great company. And I can wear the suits, and I can do the dress up, and I can watch my language, and I can do these things. But after a while of doing them, for me, it just obviously didn't work out. I'm not what they want. So
I'm just going to name a few people.
okay.
You tell me just one quick little line or first thought that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
JJ Dillon.
Great pro, great guy, easy to get along with. I think talent really appreciated him being there.
Jim Ross.
Same thing. Great guy. Great talent. Understood how to connect and communicate with talent. And that's a huge part when you're in that spot.
Vince McMahon.
Well, look, Vince knows what he wants, even when he doesn't know what he wants. He wants it to be successful. He wants the company to draw money. He wants the company to be successful and continue to be able to communicate with his stockholders and the people who are investors, and to show that he knows what he's doing, where everybody trusts his judgment. And I think the volatile part comes down when, for instance, NXT. Everybody talks about what a great product it is, and it is. It's a great product, no doubt. And they've got great coaches, and they've got great people down there. But what they've found out is when you're thrown into a circumstance where you're head up with somebody, and it doesn't matter who it is, AEW, NWA, Impact, whatever it is. I've seen it where they give you an opportunity to show that you can come out victorious or beat the ratings, whatever it may be. But once you don't, and whoever it is, let's just say Vince, wakes up on the wrong side of the bed one day and says, no, I'm changing it all up. There's not a whole lot you can do about it except live with it, because that's still his company. He's still the guy. And you can get upset all you want, but all it's going to do is just make you upset. Nobody else is going to care. And I think Vince kind of feels that way. I think Vince also plays the game with himself on how much he can do. You've heard the stories about he never sleeps. It's just constant. And any show like that, I mean, you're writing live TV every week. It's like Saturday Night Live. These guys were writing live shows every week, and that's just one show. These guys are writing 2 shows every week live on TV. Nobody understands the pressure on that. Nobody understands what it takes to do that until you do it. And it ain't easy. Even being a writer for that thing, it's not easy. You know, how can you imagine having a live TV show and the show is still being written as it's all going on the air? I mean, that's insane for a lot of people to hear that from Hollywood or coming in as script writers. They can't believe that's the way it happens until they finally wind up on a show like Saturday Night Live or The Big Bang Theory, whatever some of these great shows are that go week to week. So this is live, and I think Vince is always testing everybody else. And some people say he's out of touch. I don't know that to be the case, but I know that times change, we change, people change, and they do a lot of market surveys, and they're trying to find out what the right formula is too. So it's a weird time in the world. It really is, and everybody's aware of that, and everybody's still looking for the answer because they're not going to just fold up and go home. they're looking for the next big thing too.
Tye Bailey and Canyon Ceman.
No, both knew absolutely nothing. Were highly overrated in my opinion, and arrogant and pompous. Have way out of their league, way out of their element. And they thought, both of them thought, they were going to come in and really clean this up and really show these guys how real athletes are going to act and talk to, and we're going to make this so much better. John, Vince, no, you're not. You have no clue. None.
Now, I think that's a great stopping point for this week.
It's just a starting point for me, but we'll just stop here.
And on those two bad boys, just want to mention also go to Collar and Elbow and get one of these awesome, beautiful Bobby Eaton shirts. I honestly, like, the material is better than any shirt, and I didn't order soft or whatever. It just came in this great material.
Came that way, yeah.
It's just and not even trying to oversell it or whatever, but because all the proceeds go to beautiful Bobby Eaton's family. But I was just like, when I got it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't order like super soft. It's like the most comfortable shirt I had. Like, holy crap.
No,
so
Collar and Elbow does a great job. They do a
awesome.
great job. Yep. Sure do.
CollarandElbow.com. Go to the Bobby Eaton page. Buy that. All the proceeds go to his family. Wanted to mention that, of course, because we love beautiful Bobby here. Also want to mention your book, a pro wrestling curriculum, advice, suggestions, and stories to help the aspiring pro get to the next level. Where can they get this awesome book?
They can get that awesome book at jpwrestlingacademy.com. You can also find out when our next session starts. It will start in October. And we go through December. It's a 10-week course this time. But jpwrestlingacademy.com has all the information, including where you can get the book.
Also, go to ProWrestlingTees.com. Speaking of T-shirts, go to the Dr. Tom store or the JPWA store. I suggest the Dr. Tom Wanted Dead or Alive shirt. Like you mentioned, JPWrestlingAcademy.com website. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip, and check out my website, tnptempire.com. Dr. Tom is on Twitter at Dr. Tom Prichard. Dr. Tom, what else you got going on?
I am going to a great IWF show this weekend. I'm not sure when this drops, but we're going this weekend. It will be August 20th. The two shows, I believe, are the 21st and 22nd. No, 20th and 21st. And we go to IWF.com. And it's Independent Wrestling Federation, Kevin Knight, Facebook, something like that. So it's for a great cause. Mike Cammett is going to be honored that night. And I'm looking forward to seeing Mike Hollow there as well, and a lot of other old friends.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little Take It to School with Dr. Tom Prichard.